maximalist trends defined last summer. And looking at the runway for spring summer 26, it looks like they're trying to push that even further. And we're getting all of these like crazy rainbow colors. My knee jerk reaction was like, oh my God, like, do we really want to do this again next summer? That's my brain being trained by the internet to think that a trend happens once and it's really fast and then it's over. I think that there's this like kind of communication cycle surrounding the trends that pushes the acceleration more than consumer sentiment needs it to. So I think like we can kind of chill out, let a trend marinate for like a few seasons before we declare it done.
That is Lizzie Wheeler, resale expert and founder of Archival Bridal Studio, Studio Dorothy, and Instagram and Substack community Shit You Should Buy. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Create Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli, head of marketing, events, and culture forecasting at WGSN. Every 2 weeks, I will take you on a journey to examine how brands and consumers are shaping the future, whether through product innovations, actions and strategies, or online behaviors. In this episode, we'll hear from Lizzie Wheeler, resale expert and founder of Archival Bridal Studio, Studio Dorothy, and Instagram and Substack community Shit You Should Buy. Lizzie has come on the podcast to discuss the rise of if you know shopping networks and the value of curation as a service in today's consumer culture. Lizzie, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and a bit about your career journey so far?
So my name is Lizzie Wheeler. I run the Instagram and Substack accounts Shit You Should Buy, which is just all about finding the best deals on the internet for, in terms of pricing, in terms of like trend cycle. And also I do like private VIP closet sales through those accounts as well. And then on top of that, I run a vintage and archival bridal studio called Studio Dorothy. My career started out in wholesale over a decade ago. I did a really long time working largely in women's wear, a little bit of menswear, a lot of US-based brands, also a couple European brands. So really ran the gambit of the whole like retail scene before moving into the secondary market.
I want to start with getting an idea of where fashion shoppers are at right now. What is the mood towards spending given the current cost crisis and the sort of chaotic sociopolitical climate here in the US?
So I have to be totally honest, I haven't seen a slowdown in spending. It might be because people are coming to channels like mine when they would normally go to like a first line designer situation or be buying full price or going straight to the department stores. But I do think that, like, the kind of panic buying and, like, stress buying is still kind of bolstering retail, at least for the type of retail that I work in. So, if the sentiment is chaotic, it's like no one's buckling down yet that I can see.
How do you think women want to shop today? What I think is really interesting is the sort of tension between convenience and wanting to have a special experience, right? And I think people probably come to you because they want that curated, very high-end, vintage offering that they might not get on an Amazon, right? Or on a mass department store level. I have door dashed dresses to my house, right, from a Bloomingdale's, but the experience is always better when it feels special and super curated and, even one-to-one, which is kind of the service that you offer in your sort of DM closet sales. What do you think, really defines how women want to shop today?
The biggest trend that I've gotten in the past couple months is people thinking about, like, what will my relationship be with this garment in, like, 10 to 20 years? So I think that everyone's maybe gotten a little bit burned by the, like, you buy a whole Zara haul and then you toss it at the end of the next season. Like, the constant seasonal changes are really not what people are looking for right now. Like, yes, it's fall, people will say, "What's my fall boot right now?" And, like, sure, I get that question, like, 5 times a day, but in general, I think it's really about, like, how will I age into a piece? How do I find pieces that are worth it's not even necessarily, like, a financial investment, but it's like, I think people want a real emotional tie to the product that they're buying right now, which is part of why they wanna buy it from people, not stores or brands or websites, they want the, like, lore. I think lore is actually the thing that, like, is really driving buying right now.
Can you define what lore is for our listeners?
Yeah, lore is like backstory, but almost like in a mythology way. Like, it's not just like, "Oh, I bought this at Saks." It's like, "So I got this at this crazy place." Like, you went through, like, 3 sets of doors. It looked like a warehouse, and then there was the most amazing thing there, and it turned out that Chloe Sevigny owned it, and, it's like it's this kind of, like yeah, like, self-mythologizing. Lore is self-mythologizing.
Love that. Can you define how you basically go about accessing all of this, all the items that you sell in your closet sales and your DMs, etc.? Define a little bit about how shit you should buy works.
If you just follow me, you'll get a barrage of content on my stories where I'm just like, "I found this, like, Gautier thing on eBay. Someone should buy it. I think it's a really good price." Or like, "Oh my god, this was this runway. No one knew it." And then there's, like, a special like, if you're a paid subscriber to my Substack, you also get access to my close friends. And that's where it's like last week, I found a, spring 2005 Chloe by Phoebe Philo runway dress on Poshmark for $75, and I'm like, "That's for the paid girls." So, like, if you're a paid subscriber, you might get, like, the super crazy deals. And then when I'm doing a closet sale, it's usually for, like, fashion industry adjacent girls. Maybe it's a stylist, maybe it's, like, a bunch of us who worked in corporate. Like, once you've worked in corporate and fashion for a decade, you have the biggest archive ever, and sometimes you need to make space. So sometimes it's, like, nobody famous, it's just, like, girls like me who have a good wardrobe, and then sometimes it'll be someone with a bit of a following who will post, like, "Hi, I'm doing a closet sale with shit you should buy," and that definitely helps aggregate new followers to me, and that kind of, like, brings in more of a parasocial element if people really like this person. And that's a term I got from Anna Escalante at Who What Wear, and I think it's something that we're going to see growing a lot. So, in part, it is that pre-validation of if someone glamorous wore this in a glamorous place with glamorous people, then it's absolutely good enough for my life. And it also makes sense with, like, the way celebrity brands are all really performing well. If so and so's lip gloss brand is something that moves you, then absolutely the item that that person themselves wore is very much like a consumer driver.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you started Shit You Should Buy? What was the sort of long-term vision, gap in the market? Who is your typical customer?
When I started it, I was working in-house at brands, and I wasn't trying to be an influencer, and in fact, I had to be anonymous because, like, I worked in wholesale, which is the business of selling things at full price, and Shit You Should Buy is the business of buying things as steeply discounted as possible. So it was literally just my friends were tired of me texting them the things that I thought that they should buy, and, a couple really well-established people in the industry had reached out to me for help shopping, and I was just kind of like, "Do people want this from me?" And that was it. I had no idea that it would turn into anything. I was just kind of like, "Well, I see these deals. I can't buy everything. I'm not every size on the planet, but if there's great stuff, maybe I'll put it out there and see what happens." And that was it, literally.
So do you spend your time scouring all of these resale sites, The RealReal, eBay, etcetera, Depop maybe?
I spend all of my time doing that. Someone one of my bridal clients asked me recently, like, how many allow hours a week I allot to sourcing, and just for the bridal aspect of my business, the limit does not exist, and I don't think it would be healthy for me to try to, like, figure out how much time I spend doing that. And then obviously for shit you should buy, I think, there is a bit of a cadence to me posting. You can tell I'm doing it when I'm drinking my coffee in the morning. It's like, 8 to 9 AM, there will be a barrage of all the new things I found on the internet. There's also I do wanna shout out Gem app, which is amazing, and it's an aggregator of, like, all things resale, and so they have, an email that goes out at 8 AM-ish every day telling you what new things came on the internet from your saved search terms, but no, all of my time is spent doing this. It's compulsive, and I can't help it.
What do you think is driving this appetite for resale and vintage? Is it generationally different? Millennials versus Gen Z. Are you seeing a big gap in the market? And is it this sort of appetite? Like, I imagine as a consumer myself that it's this kind of appetite to look a little different, right? We've sort of homogenized how everyone dresses because of fast fashion. Are we all in pursuit of individuality? And that's sort of what's driving this? Or are you noticing massive differences between Gen Z and millennials?
I gotta say, I don't necessarily have the data on my clients. Like these are just screen names that or, Instagram handles that DM me, they buy the thing, they give me their address. So I don't actually necessarily know the age demographics and like maybe I should do a poll and find out. There is definitely I see it more in bridal, frankly. And it's so important for people to feel that no one can find what they have. And that's definitely, I think, a bigger driver right now than traditional luxury signifiers. So, like, yeah, exclusivity is the new luxury. It's like the most elite thing that you can have. But then with the everyday things, it's like, yeah, everyone wants that cool, coveted thing that no one else will see before or no one else has ever seen before or will see again. They want that, but at the same time, they're like, what's the perfect t-shirt? What's the perfect, work bag? And they're it's not like such a huge driver, I would say. But something I will also note is that what sells for me is things that are eye-catching, that look good on a screen. So I don't sell a lot of, like, quiet, basic things. I think people are getting that elsewhere. I'm not saying that they're not shopping for it. I just don't think that's what they're coming to me for. So, like, I kind of only post the really special things, I think, and it all sells.
So a lot of closet sales online and sort of DM shopping networks have been called like whisper networks, right? It's sort
Yeah.
of for those, if you know, you know. You talked about how some of your clientele are like, ex fashion girls or current fashion girls. They're in the know, right? They have this appetite for fashion and they're coming to you for a specific offering. Do you think that in a world where a lot of people are really pushing back on really, chain stores and things of that nature, and they want special items and they want to look individual. Do you think that whisper networks are sort of the future of shopping? Do you think if you know communities could really drive a new era of fashion purchasing from a young consumer, millennial, Gen Z, etc.?
I think saying the future of shopping feels bigger than I'm willing to commit to right now. But what I will say is that I think there has been a lot of consumer trust that has been lost in the traditional venues of shopping in terms of, like you buy something, you're told it's super exclusive, then everyone else has it, and then it gets marked down 80% 2 months later. Brands are changing their creative directors every 2 seconds. It's really hard to get attached to things. I feel like consumers are for the taking right now, basically. The loyalty ties that of the traditional venues are not there. So I think, you know, a following like mine where if I'm selling something from an influencer, it's like someone really cool in the New York scene who goes to all of these great events, and it's like, well, if so and so wore that to that event standing next to that celebrity and she looked great in it, then it's not even like a, "Ooh, I just wanna have a thing that she had because I'm a big fan." It's like, well, like, if I'm a normal person just going to drinks with friends, if I wear something that has been to such a cool place, such an elite group of people, then it, like, has a layer of, like, pre-validation, and so I think that that kind of layer of pre-validation is what people are looking for right now, and that's something that they're not finding from, like, the traditional outlets.
I think this is a nice segue because I would like to ask what retailers are actually getting wrong about the shopping experience then, if it when it comes to fashion and courting today's young people, largely women.
I think retailers are in fact, like I'm glad that you said retailers, not brands, because I think that the majority of what's gone wrong has been, like, because of retailers. I think, there's been a lot of publicity about how Saks didn't pay their bills for 2 years, and then they bought their competitors, and they, cut half of the buying jobs there, and they're still not paying their bills, and they're telling the brands that, they're giving everyone, like, net 90 terms. And so that means that there was so long when brands weren't shipping new product to these retailers. So, like, the floors were not looking fresh. And then on top of that, the only brands that are able to continue selling to places like that are really, really big brands. So, like, the newness is not happening. And then obviously, Essence has always been like the most important retailer for emerging designers. They're obviously in dire financial straits now. There's the issue if you're in the US of importing the product. So, yeah, it's, everything it just feels really hard to get cool new product, and everything is kind of gonna be driven by the brands that are able to survive these, like, massive, massive financial strains when their clients don't pay them. So, yeah, like, that's like a structural problem that's gonna make it really hard for your normal consumer to walk onto a department store floor and see something cool and new.
We've seen some retailers adapt like WhatsApp as a sales channel, right? So
Yeah.
they, have tapped their VICs, their very important clientele, um, in their phones, right, directly to them, messaging them, "Hey, we have this new item. We think you'll love it." It's sort of a play on what you're doing, but it feels a little bit more stale, right? It's very retailer to person. There's not really a lot of dialogue happening between the two. Whereas I think you humanize the experience a little bit. It's for a small community of people. It's not meant to be this massive, probably massive retail operation the way like a Saks would be, right? Do you think that that's the intention? Do you wanna keep it intentionally small and be community based?
Okay, fantastic question because it also dovetails with something I thought about the other night, which is that, if you think of the way your mom shops or, wealthy 50-something-year-old women in suburbs, they all have a dedicated sales associate at their local department store. And that's a real relationship, and that's a relationship that, like, when I've worked at brands is really important. Like, you know who the killer salesperson is who has that client book, and it literally just occurred to me the other day that I'm, like, the Gen Z millennial DSA of the internet. So, I didn't mean to position myself that way, but I absolutely love it. I love having the personal relationships with people, and, like, I don't really imagine how it could scale that well. I could definitely take on, like, twice the followers, but I don't see myself with 1,000,000 followers. I don't see what would my DMs look like? My DMs are important. I talk to people. Like, I don't know how I could manage that type of volume. So, obviously, I would love to have, like, a channel that people just watch where I just posted the great deals of the internet, but again, most of what I post sells now to my, like, fewer than 7,000 followers. How could I be posting at a rate? Like, I don't wanna have to hire shit you should buy assistant, that's so weird. It is totally the new version of the DSA at the store that has your phone number and says, "Hi, we got a new delivery."
That's such a good example of how sort of trends do come around, right? It's just it looks a little different. So yeah, we did have those sales associates in the past that were your go-to, Joan at Saks that you always went to, but it did feel a bit stale because she's probably sending that to multiple people, whereas you do have that human to human element there. I think it really makes the fashion experience, the shopping experience feel a little bit more alive, I think. How do you know what is gonna sell with your audience? Like, do you track trends? Are you concerned about the pace of the trend cycle in any way?
Super concerned about the pace of the trend cycle. I obviously track trends, and this is so my Instagram is largely just like, "Here are deals you should buy right now." And then my Substack is more fleshed out, like, we're talking about trend forecasting for fall, and I say, like, "Okay, like, people who are trend forecasting for fall as we go into fall, it's not trend forecasting, because like, when I worked in wholesale, I got the lookbook for fall 6 months prior. The buyers bought it 6 months prior. We already knew which styles were going to fall out, and so then it's like the last step is just the at retail validation. So, I was thinking about the way, like, maximalist trends defined last summer and looking at the runway for spring summer 26, it looks like they're trying to push that even further, and we're getting all of these, like, crazy rainbow colors. My knee-jerk reaction was like, "Oh my god, like, do we really want to do this again next summer?" That's my brain being trained by the internet to think that a trend happens once and it's really fast and then it's over. when in fact, like, fall winter 24 was largely like the mob wife winter. Everyone was talking about mob wife. We all wanted furs and leopard print and like black lace and all of these things. And going into this fall, I was like, well, we're done with mob wife. But no, actually, like everyone wants animal print right now. And so I think that there's this like kind of communication cycle surrounding the trends that pushes the acceleration more than consumer sentiment needs it to. So I think, like, we can kinda chill out, let a trend marinate for, like, a few seasons before we declare it done.
Yeah. Do you pay attention to what's trending on TikTok? I mean, the pace of change and trend on TikTok is so crazy. It accelerates so quickly and then goes away, right? Do you feel pressure to kind of explore the trends when they emerge and buy and promote items that are aligned with that just to capitalize on the hype? Or are you kind of agnostic and you kind of operate at your own pace?
Like, I like to be the first to tell people about a trend. If I'm getting that, like, resounding feedback about something, it's too late, I'm not gonna tell people to do it. Unless it's, like, a really great thing. Like, I wholeheartedly actually support Poochie Girl Summer, and I wrote a whole piece about it, about how, like, Poochie's been important for, like, 80 years or something. One summer where it had, like, a really hot flash in the pan doesn't mean that, like, you're gonna get burned by having bought Poochie. So, if it's a trend, I really believe in it, yes, I will support it once I hear other people talking about it, but otherwise, no. Like, I always wanna be the first. I wanna give you as much longevity out of your clothing as possible. I think quiet luxury is actually kind of like the biggest trend of it's gonna be at least 5 years, but it might be a 10-year trend cycle for quiet luxury, where everyone still is, like, really lusting after, like, the Row and all of these brands, and I also personally think that the quiet luxury trend is part of why people are coming back to me instead of going to a Zara, because I think that they have learned that, like, quality and longevity is really important. So, yeah, if you buy something at the beginning of a trend cycle, it should last you for a really long time, and that's my whole strategy.
Why do you think the quiet luxury is gonna stick around? It's interesting from a macro perspective, right? Like, do you think it's because the world is chaotic and that feels like you can control it, right? It's sort of minimal, it's easy. What's your take on that?
I think that the minimalist version of quiet luxury can kind of ebb and flow a little bit. We are absolutely entering a more maximalist moment, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if you teach a customer to buy high quality things,
Mhm.
she's not gonna then wanna go back to buying low quality things. So, I think that this has kind of been like a learning moment. And I think that quiet luxury has ushered in that kind of idea of, like, being thoughtful about your purchases, which is such a great refresher.
Mm, that's an interesting take. We have this trend at WGSN called spaving, which is essentially spending more to save money, right?
Yeah.
So I think that really aligns with what you're talking about here. It's like people are willing to invest in products that are going to last them a long time because that is seen as you didn't like the word investment earlier on today. And I think you said that wasn't the greatest word, but it is sort of like I'm going to have this for multiple years, multiple seasons. It's going to last me a long time, as opposed to sort of like wearing it and discarding it, and that cycle that we've honestly become quite accustomed to in our consumer culture, right? It's just sort of like we buy something, it lasts us for a little bit, and then it disintegrates in the washing machine, and we're kind of like, okay, on to the next. But if you buy something to last and it's made well and it's got a story attached, which I think is really important in today's consumer culture. I think what you're saying is exactly true. We're more inclined to spend and invest in these pieces for the long term because it's going to last us and there's going to be stories attached and the item kind of lives on. Is that right?
None of my customers, transparently, are talking about saving. No one is trying to be financially responsible, in at least not in their conversations with me. I will say that across the board, the, like, AUR, average unit retail, of what I'm able to sell and what people come to me for is going up. So it's like, let's say over the summer, the biggest request I kept on getting was, "I'm going to a black tie wedding." I will spend $600 to $1,000 on a dress, but I don't want to just buy it from Revolve. And the thought that, you know, 27-year-old women that are kind of just in my normal circle living in my building in Brooklyn are spending $600 to $1,000 on a dress for one event, like, that would have sounded really crazy a few years ago. That would sound really, really high. So, definitely people are like, the pain point for what an item should cost is absolutely going up.
Do you think that there's going to be like where the market is headed? Do you think there's going to be a lot more community sellers like you that are curating for their special community and it sort of becomes the norm across the board?
This is a really good time to be your own boss. It's a obviously, healthcare is great, benefits are great, but if it's a really unstable job market, I think a lot of people are looking for entrepreneurial things, and I'm not the only girl from my career. Like, one of my best friends from one of my corporate jobs is doing the same thing in London now. She is starting doing, like, personal sourcing, and that's a really special thing that a lot of people want, and it is a huge luxury to have someone shop for you. That's absolutely a luxury service, but I think the people who are buying into it are, like, not as fancy as we think, and again, that's probably part of that spaving trend where it's like, I feel like I'm spending my money left and right, I have no idea if I'm even spending it right. I will totally hire someone to advise me on these purchases, and hopefully this wardrobe lasts me a decade.
We call it curation as a service, right? People
Yes.
just not wanting to be bothered and they just like having that option to just curate your wardrobe for you is so nice and such a luxury today.
Yeah. Curation as a service is absolutely 2,500% a huge, huge growing market.
Like always, I ask all of my guests who they admire in the market or outside of your even your industry, a person or a business that's creating an inspiring or new version of tomorrow. So I'd love to know who your pick is.
Okay, so my pick is Linda Lightman from eBay, who, she started Linda's Stuff in 2000. So it was, like, before there was The RealReal, before eBay was known as a fashion resource, she started selling off her own clothing in, like, outside of Philly, and by 2006, she had, like, 25 employees. Now her eBay store does 25 million a year. And so she's like the OG internet curator on like a DIY marketplace platform. And I think that that's so great. She's like, 25 years ahead of the trend. So obsessed.
Thank you to my guest, Lizzie Wheeler, resale expert and founder of Archival Bridal Studio, Studio Dorothy, and Instagram and Substack community Shit You Should Buy. If you're a WGSN subscriber, look out for more trends at WGSN.com. If you're not, please come and discover our services. We'll be back with our next episode soon. In the meantime, you can catch the CEO of WGSN, Carla Buzasci, next week on our other podcast, Lives of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast, and see you next time.